Hello, Chapel family. We are so glad to be able to offer your family a change of pace this weekend. You know, as we wrap up a year and head into a new one, it's so important to take a deep breath and to gather those who are closest to us to reflect on what's happened as we set our feet for new direction. You know, we've taken steps to try to create for you a mini chapel experience without leaving your house this weekend. This page is packed with all the access you'll need to worship, to give, to connect to groups and teams, and also to follow along with the message Taking Notes Through You version, all without abandoning your pajamas. So, gather the family together, airplay this bad boy on the big screen, and let's dig in to Landmark.
Don't we think that there are moments in our life that happen to us? They're almost like flashes of light. They just happen. And in the midst of ordinary, everyday life comes an extraordinary happening, an extraordinary moment where you know, as if some like internal beacon, internal sense planted deeply within, the purpose of this event, this extraordinary happening, is just to show us that we've seen God. Okay, maybe not in the literal sense, you know, with these poor eyes, but it just cannot be that this moment, this unusual tick of the second hand has been just like all the others. It's different. No, this one is quite different. This is a moment with the Master, a landmark moment in our relationship with God. There's this great landmark story in the Bible. It is amazing. Let me give you some background to this story. The people of Israel have been traveling a very long time, 40 years. Their leader Moses, the one they trusted and followed, Moses has died. And over the past 40 years, God has literally provided miracles every day. What most of us would call miracle God moments, landmark moments. And they were tired of walking. God had told them there was a promised land. And standing between them and their promise, their new home, was a very full river called the Jordan. And they were now being led by a very young leader in Joshua. Let's pick up the story in Joshua chapter 3, and it says this. Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from their city and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, set yourselves apart, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. This is what I'm thinking. I've got to wonder, what goes through the mind of these people? Amazing things. They've become somewhat used to that. I mean, surely there's some level of cynicism which builds up over time. What is it that this guy Joshua, this young leader, is going to show us that we haven't seen already? I mean, after 40 years of homelessness, another amazing miracle from God might not even hold their attention. But the people press on because they hold on to the promise of God. The passage continues in our text. It says this in verse 14. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead. Now the Ark of the Covenant, don't forget, holds the 10 Commandments. Now the Jordan is at flood stage during the harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap in a great distance away, while the water flowing down right where they were crossing was completely cut off. Now I know what you must be thinking. This sounds familiar, but wasn't it Moses, and didn't he part the Red Sea? Actually, it's what the Israelites were thinking too. Where have we seen this before? Oh yeah, that's right. Isn't this the exact same thing that happened with our parents and Moses way back when we started this whole journey? Don't get me wrong. I'm sure they were grateful. After all, they needed to cross the river, and God did come through. But come on, couldn't we at least get a new miracle instead of replaying the same miracle of yesteryear? Joshua had an opportunity to be frustrated as well. He set the tone, promised a miracle that God would use to help the people trust him, and what he got was a replay. The scripture goes on to tell us that the priests who carried the ark stopped in the middle of the river. They waited there, standing on solid dry land, while everyone else got to go by them. Likely not the most comfortable position for them, as they waited on about 2 million of their closest friends to pass them by. But then something strange happened. Everyone was safely across, and just as the priests were about to complete their mission, Joshua yells out to them, "Hang on a second." Wait, what? What do you mean, wait a second? You see that big wall of water piled up in the distance? That's going to come this way again very soon. But it wasn't time to move just yet. God speaks to Joshua and says, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight." Can you imagine this? Oh, I see. We forgot souvenirs. Of course, what were we thinking? Hurrying across the river. Let's stop, grab some river rocks, and this continues to be even crazier. This is less than a festive occasion. They gathered up rocks and brought them home and stacked them in a spot as if to say, "We were here." A monument, a landmark, a monument to the present, just like a great landmark to remind us of God's power. We're all familiar with the concept of landmarks. They help us with reference points when we're giving directions. We usually say, when you hit the 7-Eleven, you make a left. Or when you get to the third red light, you'll see a Publix, make your first right. They remind us of events, even like maybe getting rear-ended at a certain intersection. Our neck hurts a little bit more, or we check the rearview mirror at that specific intersection. Landmarks are an essential part of how we live. We live in a situation that's a lot like the Israelites. We live under the blessing and relationship that we have with God. Even though we go through tragedy and hardship and pain, those moments, those God moments, are never far. They happen so often sometimes that we actually become numb to them. Like the children of Israel, we're still thankful that we have a relationship and that God is near us. But sometimes it seems to be just more of the same old over and over. And shamefully, at times we don't even notice when God has his hand and working in our lives. It's been a great year for the Chapel family. It's also been one of the hardest years for many of our lives. In the good years and especially in the hard years, it's essential that we mark the presence of God among us, a landmark to remind us. The spots that will remind us of what happened, that the legacy of the God moments continues to be celebrated. We celebrate his power to take us through the rest of our life. The young leader Joshua knew this. And when everybody was safe and dry and had found rest on the other side of the Jordan, Joshua brought out those rocks and he stacked them up. And this is what he said. Look at verses 21 through 24 with me. He says, "In the future," this is Joshua talking, "when your descendants ask their parents, 'What do these stones mean?' Tell them, Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground, for the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan what he had done to the Red Sea when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the people of all the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God." To Joshua, those rocks were not merely just a monument to the present, a way to say we were here. It was, for the people of Israel, a landmark. Joshua knew that a landmark is a reminder of God's past power to encourage us today and empower us for tomorrow. It connects us not only to our own experiences, but to the experiences of those who went before us and those who will follow after us. It unifies generations. A landmark extends our impact far beyond our own lifetime, and we become part of something bigger than ourselves. It just doesn't say we were here. It says we were there. And we get to lean on God's power, knowing that what he did back then, and he was able and he showed up in those God moments. This landmark reminds me God is still with us, and he's still going to do today what he did yesterday and for the next days. We need landmarks in our lives.
Guys, it has been a great year. So much to celebrate, and we saw God do some really big things. Can I just encourage you right now to gather up your family before this moment passes and reflect together on the landmark moments of 2014 in your family. Try to gather up something physical to create a landmark. It could be a picture, a book, or maybe something you already kept but just put away in the closet. Don't overcomplicate it. Joshua actually just chose a pile of rocks. Whatever it is, put it somewhere in your house where you can see it easily and be reminded that God was present in your lives in 2014 and He will be again in 2015. Make the most of this time together and create a landmark of how God's past power encourages us today and empowers us for tomorrow. We're excited to welcome you back next week as we launch into a brand new message series playlist. We create playlists for working out, for road trips, for nostalgia, and just for getting stuff done. But what's in your playlist to kick off 2015? We'll see you back January 3rd and 4th. Have a happy new year, and we'll see you then.